It can be downright disheartening getting in the comment section on social media. And I admire you for responding to all of your comments because it's a huge part of the community that you've built, but I would find it difficult. But I think it's testament to what you're doing, that you're attracting a certain type of people, that you're not getting too many trolls or asinine questions. Okay, I think we sort of covered social media. This is, you've hunted a lot in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Hunting tourism, I think, is often and easily vilified by the non-hunting public. For some reason, people see African game as sacrosanct. Maybe they feel it's too threatened or too majestic to be hunted, or it's this far off. They don't seem to have the same problem with killing a mule deer as they do with killing a kudu or a zebra. And the other thing is that hunting as a visitor, I don't think you have the same depth of place as a local, and that's an element that the non-hunting public picks up on and unconsciously or consciously condemns. So how does hunting as a visitor to an unfamiliar place feel different? You've got, I think, a deep sense of place here. And how could hunting tourism be better marketed to the non-hunting public so that they could understand, all of the positives of this thing?
That's a huge challenge. Just educating the non-hunting public about hunting. If they don't want to read about hunting, or if they only want to read negative stuff, they choose to read negative stuff. It's very hard to put solid, reliable information in front of people that don't want that information. So that's a challenge I don't have a real good answer for. As far as the hunting tourism and its impact on wildlife populations around the world, whether it's in Greenland or for muskox and reindeer caribou, or in Africa for kudu and zebra. By the way, zebra meat is fantastic. Some of the best steaks I've ever had came from zebra. Or elephants. Let's just use elephants as maybe one of the most controversial subjects we can throw into this mix, okay? Because it will spotlight and showcase the same issues with a lot of other species. So elephants, from a distance, are viewed with a hugely skewed perspective from most people around the world. The first thing to remember is that Africa is a continent, not a country. And within each country in Africa, there are distinctive regions. That continent is gigantic. You can fit all of North America, including Canada, on the African continent. The equator cuts the continent in half, so you've got a vast spectrum of habitats, ranging from the most sterile deserts to the most verdant, fertile jungles, right? And a lot of Africa has elephants. However, from a distance, Hollywood and groups like that view elephants as one demographic. So elephants across Africa need to be protected, right? They're almost sacred. They should never be hunted and shot. So then let's zoom in and recognize that animal populations need to be, I don't want to say managed yet, but at least viewed and analyzed on a regional basis, because there are areas in, I don't know, a certain percentage, but probably 30 or 40% of elephant habitat across Africa that are overpopulated by 3 or 4 times. Now, when an elephant population outgrows the carrying capacity of its habitat, what happens? Elephants push over trees that are 200 to 600 years old because there aren't enough trees to get a fill just nibbling off the low-hanging leaves, so they push them over. They eat everything on it and they move on to the next one. Well, with that tree having taken 200 to 600 years to grow, how long is it going to be before that aspect of their resource is replenished, right? And the elephants do this on a broad spread scale. They've turned a lot of their habitats into moonscapes because they have not had any curbing influence on their population. As a result, you get massive numbers of elephants dying of disease and starvation. That's an ugly way to die. As mankind, we have populated the earth, and some people would say in ways that we shouldn't have, I don't get into that because it's done, right? We are at a point now where we as humans are responsible for being stewards of every aspect that we influence. And even if that means keeping an elephant population in check, we need to own that. Plus, the act of hunting an elephant is not a horrible thing. It's usually a grueling endeavor. The average elephant hunt takes 10 to 20 days, and you'll put on 10 to 15 miles walking during that time. You do a lot of tracking. It's a vastly endeavor-intensive hunt, and when you take that animal, it's very dangerous to you. And then across Africa, every elephant is utilized, every scrap. They feed literally hundreds of local people every time an elephant goes down. And often those people have a hard time getting protein of any kind. This is a huge boon to them. Also, elephants are expensive to hunt. And so hunters that can afford the $40,000 to $100,000 it takes to book a hunt and go do that are injecting massive quantities of money into the local economies. They're giving jobs to the local people who are professional trackers and guides and so forth. There is not a single downside to elephant hunting in populations that can sustain it. Every single aspect is conservationally beneficial. The opposite is catastrophic. You destroy habitat, so now your region that should have sustained, let's say, 15,000 elephants can maybe sustain 2,000. How has that helped the elephant population in any way? The people are poor. Poaching is rampant because nobody has jobs anymore. It's horrible. And there's another, the really obvious examples are things like rhinos and Cecil the lion, right? Yeah. With rhinos, people don't understand a big mature male rhino hunt will sell for $300,000. It's crazy, and the opportunity is so rare now that really discerning, experienced sportsmen that really have a thing for Africa will pay that, the affluent guys. But the misunderstood thing is these guys are all tremendous conservationists as well. They're not just spending that $300,000 so they can go shoot something. The experience itself isn't worth it to them, even if they're pretty rich. The fact that they're given $300,000 to the biology department that handles the local rhino population does mean something to them. That's why they're willing to spend that level of money. Now let's look at the actual biological ripples involved. When a rhino hits a certain age, he becomes sterile. A bull rhino, completely sterile, can no longer produce young rhinos. Yet, this is just past, these animals are unique this way, it's just past their prime. So a big bull rhino may have 4 to 10 years worth of dominating strength and vigor and vitality in his, in his life before a younger, fertile bull can bump him out of that herd of 10 to 30, whatever, rhino cows. So if you don't take that old bull out, you create, as a biologist managing that population, you create an age gap where no calves are born for 5 to 10 years. How is that beneficial to rhino population comeback? It's not. So you get somebody that'll come in and shoot that rhino, give $300,000 to the game management department, take the sterile bull out so you don't get a gap in the calf production. Every single way this benefits the rhino population. There is no downside other than, oh, he killed a rhino. Mm-hmm. He's evil, right?
So, yeah. So, no, exactly. I think that was an excellent explanation of not just wildlife management in the context of tourism in Africa, but also in wildlife management here or anywhere. Why do we get sort of Cecil the lion instances? You're saying you can't show information to any group that doesn't want to see it, obviously, and that's no doubt true. I feel like that information, like the many people would be utterly convinced by what you just said. why is that information not, is it being presented to people? I don't feel like it is being presented to people, and that there's this huge mass of the public who, because what you've done is you've explored a situation in depth in order to see all the nuance. And we remove all the nuance and see Cecil the Lion, and we misunderstand, because without nuance you misunderstand. Is there a nuanced explanation of things being presented to the public, and if so, why is it not taking hold?
I don't think there is, and I think it's the reason is it's too scary. Like, if I were to print that explanation, convincing and accurate as it may be, I would get a huge amount of negative feedback. If I was to post that explanation on Instagram with a picture of a dead rhino, I would get a huge amount of negative impact or negative feedback, right? From people that have their minds made up so substantially they have no flexibility in their viewpoint. And so it's simply a matter of, it's very uncomfortable
But you
to
would
put
open the
yourself
minds.
out like this,
Yeah.
right? People that are willing to, consider the fact are a totally different group, but they're unfortunately the vast majority, but the vocal minority. They're not going to jump in and say, "Hey, I learned something. I'm thankful for this. You've just opened my mind and educated me about managing elephants on a regional level and why managing old bull rhinos is so beneficial and important to the future of rhinos. I understand now. Go for it, man." You don't get that feedback. You get guys that go like, "Huh, that's really cool." And maybe that night they discuss it with their significant other, before falling asleep. And that's about as far as it goes. There are some groups, the Dallas Safari Club, the Safari Club International, any hunting magazine worth its salt is trying to educate people and promote those viewpoints. But you got to be somebody that's already looking at the Dallas Safari Club newsletter, or you don't see it.
Yeah, that's fairly sort of preaching to the choir. It seems like that's exactly right. And possibly the guy who goes, "Oh wow, did I learn something from this? I've got an open mind." Then they scroll through the comments and they see the 100 animal rights people saying, "You're a Nazi for doing this," or whatever it is. Like, the thing which blows my mind on Instagram, and I wish I had never gone there, is the people who say, "and the animal holocaust," which I think is just in terrible taste. But I think digestible, not fun or happy, but easily consumable material for a wider non-hunting public, it is maybe the solution to getting that information out there. But I think what you just said was excellent.
Thank you. There are groups, even Meat Eater with Stephen Ranella, he's done more for changing, I think, the average American family's perception of hunting and eating wild game meat than any other current organization. So there is some good being done. It's always going to be an uphill battle because at the top there's the animal rights people throwing rocks at you, right? And it's challenging, but it's not hopeless.
No, you're doing it. I think for instance, you've brought me into the gun thing, and I didn't come at it with a huge interest in guns. I think that this is the type of, long form outreach that changes people's perception of things.
Well, somebody's got to do it.
Yeah, no, keep on.